Thank you for joining us once again here at Industry Insight, brought to you by Prosumer Connect. My name is Shaun Marshall. I'm the director and founder of Prosumer Connect. Again, our resident expert on all things fraud, Mr. Garth, the Klerk from the ICB. Garth, thanks once again for joining us.
It's always a pleasure, Shaun. Thank you.
We're making a habit of it, and I hope it continues.
Anytime.
Absolutely. Today we want to talk about COVID. It's certainly the topic of conversation, so to speak, for the past year and a bit. So I'd like to engage with you from a fraud aspect. How has COVID impacted your environment and what you guys see from the Insurance Crime Bureau's point of view?
So it's such an interesting question, Shaun. You know, if you took us back 12 months from now, so February 2020, we were planning and preparing for our conference. We were having executive breakfasts. And the beginning of March, we had a fantastic time. It was great. We were networking, sharing experiences. By the end of March, we were all sat at home going, fantastic, 5-6 weeks at home, bit of a chill time. Yeah. Over a year later, and we're still really not sure how long this COVID is going to be running for. You know, we keep on saying, well, the next lockdown's coming, the next wave's coming. But from a business point of view, take that textbook, tear it up, and let's make a new set of rules here.
Absolutely.
And that's what's really happened on the fraud and crime side. In the first lockdown, physical crime reduced. Everybody was at home.
Yes.
So if you were going to steal a vehicle and you're driving around on the road, you're going to be asked some questions.
Yeah,
so, physical crime reduced, accidents reduced, housebreakings reduced. It was fantastic. Everybody sort of took a break, took a breather. As we then came out of the first lockdown, we started to see a return to normality as regards fraud and crime and accident statistics. Accidents probably still slightly lower because less people were on the road, driving a lot less.
Absolutely.
Insurance companies reduced premiums, and we did a whole lot of things. But we were still experiencing. Now, where we are a year down the line, is we have seen an uptick in physical crimes. We've seen an uptick in opportunistic fraud, and that's of concern to us.
Okay. Unpack that a bit for me. If you say opportunistic fraud, what does that look like to the average person?
Sure. So if I can take a quick step back, you get 3 types of people, Shaun.
Okay.
You get the inherently honest. And if I'm speaking to my wife, I'm inherently honest. I never lie. I would never steal from anybody. I'm just a good guy. Okay. So if I see 100 Rand lying on the floor, I'm going to pick it up and I will try my best to identify the owner of that 100 Rand. Opportunistic criminal is somebody who sees the 100 Rand lying on the floor, looks around so that nobody sees him, picks it up and puts it in the pocket. And then you get the professional criminal who sits there all day, every day, 365 days a year, looking to commit fraud, commit crime, to derive financial benefit from
Looking
that.
for an opportunity.
They are creating the opportunities.
Okay.
Now, what has happened with COVID, because of the socio-economic pressure that it's created, is it's taken a whole lot of more honest individuals and forced them into the opportunistic criminal classification. Where now I no longer have employment, I no longer have an income, I no longer have money to put bread on the table or food on the table. I now need to do something. And quite often that is turn to crime, turn to fraud. It might start off petty, and then as we see, the first one is easy, the second one becomes easier, the third one becomes habitual.
Yeah, absolutely. And Garth, the reality is just syndicates, people that make a living from crime and those kind of things. You've previously also mentioned to us, some of these guys are great at what they do. They're extremely innovative. They're specialists in their fields and they're absolutely opportunists. The reality to the general consumer is just they're finding themselves in a position where they're taking a chance. And the reality is just when you look at somebody his norm isn't crime. So like me, I don't commit crime. So the first time I do it, I'm going to look like the kid with a hand in the cookie jar versus a syndicate. So just talk to me about how different is it to identify, the normal man on the street now trying his hand at be it whether it's forced or not. The fact of the matter is he's doing wrong, and he's committing fraud, because there's no other word for it. Asking for something that you don't have and that's not due to you is fraud. So just talk to us about the differences between catching a syndicate and catching the average Joe trying to get his hand in the cookie.
Sure. I think the golden rule is that we will always catch you. It might take a little bit longer, but you will always be exposed and your fraud or your crime will always surface. So what we see in the industry is the amateur criminal is not necessarily aware of the internal controls and processes. And Shaun, insurance companies have got those red flags. The amateur criminal is going to set off alarm bells and red flags a lot quicker than the professional syndicate will. And that's what we're seeing at the moment. We're seeing a number of what we call fast-track claims, again driven by COVID economic pressure, where people are desperate. And we've seen in South Africa figures between 3 million and 4 million people that are now unemployed due to COVID. Times are tough. The economic situation out there is difficult. So people are driven towards desperation and crime. But the amateur criminal, who is more or less included in those 3 to 4 million people, is going to set off the alarm bells, going to set off those red flags. The artificial intelligence and the monitoring systems within the insurance processes will catch them quite quickly. The syndicated criminal is being picked up by the sophistication of the volume flags. So if you do something once, I'm more than likely not going to spot that. And again, if I can refer to my wife, I hope she doesn't watch this, if she buys something sort of under the 500 Rand on my credit card, probably not going to spot it. But if I buy 10 of those, I'm going to be going, hey, what's happened to the budget this month? And that's a very similar principle as if we take a look at, these syndicates, because they start then pushing the volumes. And the minute you start to push those volumes, again, you start to become exposed. So higher sophistication, higher volumes, you're exposed.
So Garth, I think the next logical question is just, why should people not commit fraud? What is the consequences of them committing fraud? I know it's a ridiculous question to ask, but what is the typical consequences with people getting caught within the short-term insurance industry committing fraud?
So there's a very simple factor in play here, Shaun, and I remember my standard 6 accounting teacher told me, it was quite a few years ago that I was in standard 6, she said, it'll never be enough, and you will get caught. Those are the 2 key factors to remember. It will never be enough, because once you've done it once, you get the taste for it. Easy income, easy revenue, I'll do it again. You do it again, you expose yourself again, your likelihood of getting caught increases. Always remember, you will get caught. There are a number of industry bodies like the Insurance Crime Bureau, like the South African Fraud Prevention Services, like some of the credit bureaus that are running fraud flags in the background for the insurance industry that will identify fraud. If you get caught perpetrating a fraud, the severity of the impact can follow you for the rest of your life. People often think, if I commit a fraud, I'll just apologize, I'll pay back the insurance company, and I'll put us in a net zero effect.
Yes.
That's not true. If you are caught perpetrating fraud, that record stays there for the rest of your life. If you are dismissed as an employee of an insurance company or a bank perpetrating fraud, that dismissal, the criminal charges related, are going to stay with you for the rest of your life. As the Insurance Crime Bureau, if we identify an individual or a syndicate that is perpetrating fraud, our next step, investigate, open a SAPS criminal case, have that case prosecuted, and we will obtain a conviction and a finding. That finding is not always a jail term. It might be a suspended sentence, it might be community service, it might be to pay back the insurance company. But the fact that you now have a criminal conviction on your record can affect your credit history. It can affect your ability to transact financially with banks and with insurance companies.
Because how would you get finance again if you can't get insurance?
And nobody's going to trust you anymore. And it can also impact and bar you from being a principal or a director of a company. So when you consider and you're in your little dark space thinking nobody's watching me, and you're considering committing a crime, our message to you is don't do it. Because that crime will come to light. You cannot stay in your dark space forever. You're going to come outside, you're going to be exposed, and you're going to be caught and prosecuted.
Thanks, Garth. I think what I take from this is first and foremost, apart from the obvious, don't do it. We're all in circumstantial situations currently with COVID. But I think what's important is to realize that the industry, by and large, is starting to keep better records. So doing something like this in the moment can have repercussions for many years to come. And the fact of the matter is just fraud costs the industry millions. And that means that burden is placed onto any person that's got insurance because he is subsidizing the fraudulent activities of dishonest people. So just for our community's sake, Garth, by the way, if you know of a fraudulent transaction having happened or a fraudulent claim or any type of fraud within the industry, how can the consumer notify us pertaining to those instances?
Oh, that's a great point, Shaun, and it's something that we really encourage. We've got a motto that says, if you see it, report it. And we encourage people to go and have a look at our website. It's sarcb.co.za. And on that, there's the fraud line for the insurance industry. And that will allow you to report it anonymously if you choose to do so. We are then given the opportunity to case manage the fraud report, to investigate it. We might have to interact with the reportee, but it's a community opportunity to make a difference in the larger South Africa and to protect the country in which we live and work.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. There you have it, guys. www.saicb.co.za. Please go visit their site. And if you are aware of anything like that, fraud is a country problem, and we have a responsibility to rid this country from fraudulent behavior.